Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to do a drawing of Ahsoka Tano whilst I talk about the book, the Ahsoka Tano novel. This novel takes place exactly a year after Order 66 happens, but let's get into it. So, the book opens with a trauma circle. I call it trauma circles. Basically, if you have a physical copy of the book, there are a few different sections with like 2 or 3 pages or so that are grayed out. And those are all like flashback sort of things. So like the very first one is Ahsoka fighting Maul on Mandalore. And so, you know, it was very cool to see that. Just that kind of concept art almost. The specifics are different than they are in Clone Wars, so technically it's contradicting canon because the Ahsoka novel is technically canon. Then we start off the book, and the book they start on a planet called the Beskha, and she's working for the Fardy family. The Fardys will come back later, and it's 1 year after Order 66. It's the very first Empire Day to exist. If you don't know what Empire Day is, I believe it was introduced in Rebels. Basically, it's like the 4th of July, but the opposite, because instead of celebrating New Game freedom, they're celebrating the loss of freedom. Woo! Anyway, one of the Fardy children, of which there are quite a few, come up and warn Ahsoka that there are Imperials in town, and that they are, like, the Imperials are trying to meet all the new people of the town, and she counts as new. Basically, they want to weed out anybody who's a refugee, because the Empire is like that. So, she takes the hint and steals one of the Fardy's ships, and she skips. She leaves town, and she flies. She ends up finding a backwater farming moon. So this moon is called Rada, R-A-A-D-A, and this is where most of the novel takes place. Once she gets to Rada, she finds an abandoned house by someone who got married and moved away, and one person shows up and like introduces herself. Her name is Kaden, and she's about the same age as Ahsoka. I believe she's human, and she's got a little sister named Miara, and they're like the secondary main characters. But yeah, anyway, so Ahsoka introduces herself as Ashla, and says that she's a mechanic and will help with like building farm tools. And Kaden's like, oh great, I have a farm tool that needs to be remade. So she remakes the thresher, and you know, basically she made her reputation as a mechanic super solid. She fixed it really good with almost nothing and such. Anyway, so then in this novel she does a lot of meditating and like reflecting and reaching out through the Force and trying to find any semblance of what she felt before, but it's just all empty. There's a whole bunch of emptiness where there used to be like Obi-Wan and Anakin. It's just empty, and it's really, really harsh. And I tried to portray this in the drawing by making kind of like a vignette almost. Anyway, so then there's this guy named Tabola. He's kind of like the town drunk kind of thing. They go to Zelda's bar. Zelda is a Togruta, like Ahsoka, and he runs this bar. It's like the best bar in town. It's not necessarily like a bar in the sense of just sells alcohol. There's also food and stuff. That's where most of the people go to eat and all that. Ahsoka meets Barchin, Kaden, Hoban, Nira, and Miara. They're like a farming group, like he supervises their work kind of thing. And then Hoban and Nira are a thing. Ahsoka is very wary, and she knows that, you know, she's on the run. She's got to have backup plans on backup plans. And so she goes out into the rocks and like starts setting up a little base if she needs to leave that abandoned house that she found. She starts smuggling, you know, equipment and food and, you know, other stuff out there. So that way, if she needs to leave, she needs to make a quick exit, she's not completely screwed. Then the Empire comes to Rada. There's Jenith Pilar, is some, you know, smuggler who got hired by the Empire, and his job was to find a place where they could make these, like, they're basically military rations, but they totally destroy everything. What he does is he's like, this little backwater moon in the Outer Rim, nobody's gonna miss it if we take up all of their resources and leave them to die. And the Empire's like, sick, let's go. And so the Empire starts to create a settlement, and as they're starting to lock down the shipyard, Ahsoka realizes that and is like, nope, I need my ship. So she goes, she takes it, basically does a full circle around the moon before landing it in a ravine. Basically, the Empire starts forcing the farmers to farm their new crops, and like, you know, slowly but consistently just ramping up their levels of oppression, and like they set up curfews and are forcing people to work for longer and longer and longer. And the farmers aren't super happy, but Ahsoka's there, and she's like, no, this won't stand, because, you know, she's got too big of a heart, but like, it causes trouble, because it does. And then once the farmers realize what they're planting, because one of the farmers, I think it's Varchin, recognizes it, and knows that like this sort of thing sucks up all the nutrients in the soil and like makes it useless for at least a few harvests and a few seasons and such. And so, you know, he's like, this is going to leave our fields useless, and with our fields useless for like the next upcoming 5 years, we're not going to be able to survive. Like, we're a tiny moon. This is our only field. How can we do this? And so they're like, we got to get out of here. So, you know, Ahsoka talks to them and is like, she's done this thing before. And as one of the times when they're talking, the Empire comes in, and Tabola, the, you know, angry guy, he goes up and he, you know, messes around with a couple Imperial officers, and then a stormtrooper or two comes up and just shoots him dead in the middle of Zelda's bar. And so, yeah, that was kind of the bit where they're like, we gotta do something. So, Ahsoka comes up with this, like, very strategic, very, sabotage, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost espionage kind of mission, like, where she's gonna get them out as much as she can. Like, she does her research, basically. She knows how to do it. She's been, you know, part of the military and such. So that's what her goal is. Hoban, on the other idea, is like, what are you doing? This is never going to work. We got to make a full stand. And so, his crew of farmers, who's like, I mean, yeah, we trust you and, like, our group more than we trust this random person who got here a month ago or a few months ago, and which is fair. And so they kind of like, okay, we'll go with Ahsoka, but we're also going to do our own thing. And so on the night that Ahsoka's plan is, like, you know, going to do a thing, she's going to basically take out a few of the Empire ships and, you know, sabotage that. And Hoban is like, no, we're just going to straight up go to the Imperial office and start shooting. And that doesn't go well for him. And Ahsoka figures that out. And so Ahsoka's like, oh no, what have you guys done? She goes to the other group because at that point, Caden's like, uh-oh, we made a mistake, didn't we? And Ahsoka's like, yes, you did. Where are you? Like, let me try and help. And so she does everything she can to help. Hobart ends up dying, which takes out Neera, like, emotionally completely. But anyway, she takes them. They end up fleeing into the field. And at some point, Ahsoka has to use the Force. Ahsoka's used the Force once before. She used it with the Farty family. She saved one of the Farty kids from death, basically, from falling boxes. And then, so they run into the hills, and they hide out in the hills. And in those hills, Ahsoka's like, Ahsoka had to use the Force. And so she's like, I can't be here. It's going to be super unsafe if I stay. And so Ahsoka dips again. And it's fair, because obviously the Empire now knows that she was a Force user and all that. Goes back to Tibesca and exists with Halada Farty, is one of the Farty kids who is Force sensitive. And Ahsoka picked up on that, and the Farty kid is like, there's been a darkness, but it left, like, right as you showed up. And Ahsoka knows what that darkness is. She's felt it before around Darkside users like Dooku and Maul and Grievous and such. And so she understands the shadow, as it's called. Talks to this kid, makes it clear, and, like, you know, tells her, like, stay under the radar, don't be showing off any Force powers kind of thing. Anyway, so this darkness was on a mission to find this kid, this Farty kid. But Ahsoka had inadvertently saved Halada by using the Force on Rada, which drew the Inquisitor from Tibesca to Rada and away from Halada Farty. Anyway, so Ahsoka hangs out with them, and then she realizes, I can't stay here anymore. Because while she went back to Tibesca, she stayed there for a while. She got a job with the Farties again, and, like, you know, ran missions, flying and such, because they realized, oh, she's actually a good pilot. So she ended up being very Jedi, and, like, you know, good doer. In secret. And with the Farty ships, like, when she would send them out on their mission, she might deviate her course and save a merchant from pirates, or something like that, and then go back. And it was it was random enough that it didn't pick up any suspicion necessarily with the Empire, but the Black Sun picked up, and they sent a bounty hunter after Ahsoka, who ended up fighting her on this moon or planet, in the same system as Tibesca. Anyway, Bail Organa also picked up on this activity in the Outer Rim, and he realized it was a Jedi. He knew it was a Jedi, he didn't know who, so he sent two of his closest advisors to go, like, find this person and pick them up. And so they did, but Ahsoka wasn't having any of that, and so she, like, immediately knocked them out because she had just gotten picked up by a tractor beam. And she snuck her way into the bridge and was gonna wipe the data or whatever and like release the tractor beam and then wipe the security footage. And she comes up with a certain little droid. And I have an emotional breakdown because Ahsoka just reunited with R2-D2 and it was beautiful and I loved it. And it was so sweet. Anyway, then Ahsoka is like, oh, R2, oh my god. And so she's like, maybe I should figure out, what's going on. And R2's like, yeah, Bail Organa sent me and he wants you to join him in his fight against the Empire. And she's like, okay, but if I'm going to meet him, it's going to be on my own terms. So she gives R2 a set of instructions to get Bail Organa and like tells R2 to wipe the security footage and release tractor beam, which R2's like, yeah, I got you. Anyway, so that all happens and it was really beautiful. And then Ahsoka ends up going to meet with Bail Organa and ends up working with him for that and is like, yeah, there's this moon, so I might need some help with that, but I need to go. Bail Organa's like, how can I help? I'll let you know if I need you, which she did end up needing them for an evacuation. So she ends up getting this connection with Bail Organa, who tries to convince her to fight for the Empire, and she's like, yeah, maybe, I don't know, I still yet to make up my mind. Anyway, so she goes back, and like once she leaves Bail, she understands that she needs something. All throughout the book, she's carrying just like spare parts and such, as it's described, and she's keeping those specifically close to her, and it's pretty easy to pick up on, but that's her lightsabers. She doesn't have necessarily everything she needs, but the biggest thing she's missing is the crystals. So she does some meditating, and then one of the trauma circles is Ilum, as you know, is where the Jedi younglings would go to find their crystals. But the Empire knows this, Anakin knows this, Anakin's been to Ilum more times than any other Jedi because he keeps losing his lightsabers, so Ilum is being mined for its crystals, and Ahsoka sees this, and it's like a horrifying sight, but she does this meditation thing, and realizes none of the crystals on Ilum are hers. Like, the crystal calls out to the Jedi, and she reached out, and there was nothing there for her, and she was like, this is tragic, but kyber crystals can go anywhere in the galaxy, and they will forever, and such, but these are not where my kyber crystals are. And she reaches out, and realizes that the ones that are calling to her, the ones that she knows are hers, are on Rada, back on that moon that she left a few months ago. And she knows she has to go back. She knows she has to go back, she has to return, she has to save the people, she has to do whatever she can. And so she does that. She goes back to Rada. The farmers have been living out of the mountainside for that few months where Ahsoka was away. Okay, what happens next is a little horrifying. So, Kaden gets captured by the Inquisitor. And then the Inquisitor makes his way up to the camp, and he finds their base, and he slaughters them all. He slaughters them all without mercy, and the way it's written is actually really beautiful, but not all of them actually died. It was, Miara, I think, was the only survivor, and she's just a kid, and when she woke up, and all of her family, all of her friends, everyone she had known her entire life, was basically dead beside her. I mean, not everyone. Like, there was still about half the crew or so had stayed back in the town, thanks to Ahsoka. But everyone who had been part of the attack against the main area where Hoban died was killed. And Miara was there and woke up to the carnage of it all, and it was traumatizing. Then the Inquisitor took Kaden back to his Imperial offices, and he started interrogating her. And that's about when Ahsoka comes back, and Ahsoka finds Miara, and is like, what the heck happened here? And so she goes in, the Inquisitor comes, and is like, I found you, Force-sensitive one, I'm gonna kill you, kind of thing. And so Ahsoka fights this Inquisitor, and it's really beautiful, it's like, it's a really good fight, and she does kind of a similar thing that she does to Maul in the beginning of the book, where she's like, effectively waits for him to screw up, and then it's basically the same fight that's in Tales of the Jedi, where she grabs his lightsaber, that exploded in his face. It was brutal. Anyway, so Inquisitor is dead, and she basically, like right there in the middle of everything, she takes his kyber crystals out of his, and she puts them into what she's been working on, and her two lightsabers. She unbleeds them, which is the process that turns them white from red, and it's I don't know, it's really beautiful. Anyway, so she now has her own lightsabers. She's got two lightsabers of shining white, and she rescues Kaden, and as they're escaping, Kaden is very worse for the wear. She's been subject to like all of the Imperial interrogation tactics, and she's like not doing great. And so Ahsoka is like standing, right in front of her, basically very protective. Because that is what Ahsoka is. Ahsoka is the protector. And so she's like, we gotta get out of here. And then she ends up calling Bail, And they end up rescuing pretty much all of the moon, had ended up evacuating. Ahsoka has a conversation with Bail, and it's really sweet. The last page, I'm going to read it out. "Thank you," she said. "It's good to have a mission again. I think I'm going to end up a lot further in your debt than you are mine. But you're welcome," he said. "Let's just call us even and stop keeping track," she said. "I'm going to be busy enough as it is." "What am I going to call you if I can't call you Ahsoka?" he asked. "We'll need a code name at the least, so you can deal with other operatives." They looked out the viewport as Alderaan grew bigger and bigger. It really was a beautiful planet, though Ahsoka would always miss the whispering grass and Retta. Alderaan was blue and green and a good staging point for galactic uprising. The center, where the thread of all their hopes connected. "Fulcrum," she said. "You can call me Fulcrum. And welcome to the rebellion." Oh, it's beautiful. But yeah, so that's the Ahsoka book. Overall, I would say 10 out of 10. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's written pretty well. And queer representation, Kaden ends up kissing Ahsoka at some point, and then Ahsoka is like, we don't have the time to unpack all that, and B, I don't know how to unpack all that because I'm a Jedi and I don't know how emotions work. But it's not focused on relationships in a romantic kind of way. Like, it's not a romance novel. It's a wartime, refugee, oppressive government kind of novel, but still a little queer, so cool. There are so many lines that just hit so hard, and you will cry while making this book. I did not make it through this book without crying. It is beautiful and it is painful because that is how Ahsoka works. So yeah, thanks for listening to me rant about the Ahsoka novel. It's a very good book. I highly recommend you read it, even though I just spoiled the whole thing for you. And I might do the same thing, this whole same video concept with the Kenobi novel. I might even just do it with any books I read, but specifically Star Wars books I think would be cool. So I'll say if this video gets 10 likes, we'll say, that I'll do the same thing with the Kenobi novel. I think that'd be really neat. Anyway, go enjoy the Ahsoka show in a couple days, and now you know a bit more about Ahsoka lore. Anyway, that's all for me. Bye!